Good evening and welcome to Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right of centre viewpoint. And you'll be glad to see, I'm sure, that Jonathan has actually sorted out his connection problems. He's got lovely video and possibly even lovely audio. Jonathan, is it lovely?
I'd say.
Well, it's better than it's been. Okay, so we've got everybody here tonight. I think we've got Sam. Say hello, Sam. We got Susan.
Hello.
Who's already yawning. And as we've already said, we've got Jonathan and I'm Steve. Okay, a fairly packed agenda, I think. We've got 4 items to discuss. And we shall begin with the first one. So today, thousands of anti-racism protesters have gathered across the UK, defying calls from ministers and police chiefs to avoid mass gatherings. Crowds of mostly young people on Saturday heard speeches in Parliament Square, London, declaring the beginning of the end of institutional racism, and observed a minute's silence on one knee to commemorate black people killed by the police in the UK. Holding banners reading, "There is a virus greater than COVID-19, and it's called racism," and "The UK is not innocent," protesters called for early age education about colonialism in schools and for an end to disproportionate use of stop and search as the drizzle cleared and a festival atmosphere permeated. So, protesters spreading from the US to the UK. What do you make of all of this, Susan?
I'm really frustrated that we've been on lockdown for so long. We have got businesses have gone out have had to fold. We've got people that are on the breadline, and we've all done it to prevent death to people that are vulnerable. So I'm not vulnerable. According to statistics, I'm very unlikely to get this, and if I am, I'm very unlikely to have any bad symptoms from it. So I've done everything I can to protect other people, and now everyone has just gone out and just undone everything we have done. So I get a bit fed up when people tell me to stand in line at a shop. I think, why? Why do I need to stand in line at a shop if thousands upon thousands of people can break all the rules? So I'm a little frustrated.
Yeah, I think that's a good take on it. I mean, what do you make of it, Sam?
Yeah, well, I think given that we were told that we shouldn't be going too close to each other and the rules were supposed to be stopping public gatherings, the fact that this is being allowed, I think that just shows that the whole thing's a bit of a joke, isn't it? I don't see how they can carry on lockdown after this. Although at least our protesters are sort of like blowing whistles and singing Kumbaya, which is, slightly more peaceful than the Americans who were actually beating people up and killing people.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few instances of violence, but compared to what's going on in America, nothing like it, obviously. At least not so far, we say, fingers crossed. So what do you think, Jonathan? What do you make of these guys?
Well, it's irresponsible, but there's not a lot you can do about it unless you really want to get stuck into them.
Yeah, your audio is so loud tonight. It's the opposite of your usual problem.
All right.
You might want to sit back a little bit. Right, now talk. Oh, and then he sits there silent.
Yeah, I know. Look red-faced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they all mean well, don't they? But I'm not sure, and I've seen a lot of other people saying they're not sure what a bad cop killing a guy in America has to do with the UK. They seem to think that this endemic racism problem is all over the world and exists in the UK too. I'm not convinced about that, but what do you guys think? Sam, do you think we've got a terrible problem with racism in this country?
I don't think we've got a terrible problem. I think we actually, by and large, are very tolerant as a country. I mean, I know there's been a lot of problems in the past, and obviously the issues with Stephen Lawrence, and they looked at institutional racism in the police. I do think there have been problems in the past, but I do think actually, by and large, we are a very, very tolerant country. And I think that rioting isn't the way to go. If you are unhappy, there are different ways to show your unhappiness. We are a democracy. The ballot box is a good place to start.
I mean, it's interesting. It is a big debate in America, although nobody will openly speak out against the situation that's going on, probably rightly so. The whole debate about the background of it is becoming quite interesting in the US as people, both white and black, come out to say we don't support what Black Lives Matter are doing, and now the American government are talking about making Antifa a terrorist organisation. I mean, I actually agree with that. What do you think, Jonathan? Do you think Antifa are or aren't a domestic terrorist organisation?
I think they've got the potential to be, but I mean, a lot of people have missed the point about this rioting, and that is that, I mean, rioting is combat, and combat is every young man's dream. And so, it's all about enjoying yourself, really. It's not about, what can beat sort of throwing rocks at people, or smashing windows, or I mean, people don't realise that rioting is fun, and most of these people rioting are young men. You'd be hard pushed to go on the internet and find anybody who's not male and not young who's rioting.
So again,
they've missed the point. Rioting is fun, and these people enjoy it.
So before we address that idea, Jonathan, could you sit back, because that close to that microphone is making it boom. Right, Sam, what do you think? Rioting is fun? What do you make of that?
Well, I personally don't find writing fun, but I'm not a male, so maybe if I was a male, I'd love it. I'd love smashing stuff up. But actually, one thing I want to talk about, which I got shut down for saying this online, and it really has made me angry, and I've been stewing on it ever since, because actually, the Democrats are saying so much in America about how, we're such super nice people, and if you're a black person, you should be voting for us because we're really great guys, and forgetting everything they did. All the oppression they did, all the fact that they enslaved black people, they brought them over, kept them as slaves for years, despite them people wanting them to have rights. They kept saying, no, you guys aren't going to have rights. The Republicans even broke away and formed their own party because they didn't support the slavery. And these guys kept on and on and on until the 60s. And now suddenly, because they say, oh yeah, we're not racist anymore, then everyone's like, oh yeah, these are really good guys. And, how can people forget history? And I really am feel angry about it. And people say, oh, it's not relevant, but it absolutely is relevant.
I saw an interesting video made by a black guy from America, and I posted it on my Facebook feed today. But it was interesting because his argument was that people who talk about white privilege are being racist. And this was a black guy saying this. It's not me. It's not my view. I just thought it was interesting. He said that to suggest that you are privileged means that you therefore think that black people have a worse life than you, have less chances than you. And he said, as a black man, he hadn't experienced that, and in fact he felt that it was almost it sounded like they were full of themselves, like they thought they were better, and they felt that they needed to kind of throw a bone to black people to help them up. And he said, we don't need any help. He said, I don't need your help. He said, I've got no problem with white people. He said, but I don't need you coming along giving me a hand. I'll do fine on my own, thank you. And I thought that was an interesting take.
Well, there was a really interesting take by that Candace Owens as well, wasn't there, that got massively trashed. She's a black woman in America, and she basically, what she was saying was, she doesn't understand how she feels, in her opinion, that black people aren't helping themselves, because what white people do is, if a white person commits a crime, we drop them like a stone. We're like, no, those guys are really awful, they're nothing to do with us. Like the police officer, this guy's an idiot, we're not interested in him whatsoever. But black people, if people do bad things, they're kind of like, no, actually, these are really good people. They're misunderstood. And she said her view is that that's kind of perpetrating actually a problem rather than actually helping. I thought it was interesting.
I mean, I've noticed that in this whole thing, if the cops have formed the cordon and have said don't come past, and then people try and come past and somebody gets knocked over, that video goes all over the internet and all over the world in 10 seconds. Violent cops knock this person over. But when you get black people coming out and shouting at the other black people who are rioting and saying, obviously there's white ones too, but shouting at the black people who are rioting and saying, why are you doing this to our neighbourhood? Don't you realise you're burning down our businesses? We're black people too. Those videos don't go viral in the same way, or certainly not from the media. They do seem to be taking one side of the argument over the other. I mean, have you seen any of that, Susan?
Yeah, and going back to Jonathan's point about the young and dumb really that are going out and doing certain stuff. I don't know about anyone else, but I've seen quite a few so I've seen a lot of amazing. So take COVID-19 out of this protest, I've seen some amazing speeches, some amazing respectful behaviour. Some people talking about change and moving forward, which has just been brilliant. But I've also seen people throw rocks at other people's cars for no reason whatsoever. And then when the car owner turns around, I've seen them scream, quick, phone the police, which is absolutely amazing and just goes to show how stupid some of these kids are. I mean, they was all young, and then they legged it when this very old guy got out of the car and said, how dare you throw rocks at my car? I've never done anything. There was another incident where the guy was setting fire to things, and he set fire to himself, which was, obviously not very funny. But when he stumbled down the stairs and the flames... No. They put
Why would that not be funny?
But he fell down and everyone was like screaming, oh my God, phone him. And I was like, how would you expect the emergency services to drive through the rioters where they're getting smashed and trashed? This wasn't in our country. smash and trash to then save you, and these are the people that you're protesting against because you think this, and this. So I do think Jonathan's a bit right, where if you're going out and you're looting, it means you've got very little to lose, and that's normally the youth of the communities, because they haven't got a lot to use. They haven't built their homes up. They haven't got the career to lose or anything like that. So you've got a bit of a point there.
I think that I found that's true of most of the people that are sort of very sympathetic towards it. Most people that are sympathetic are either exceptionally privileged in the sense that they haven't ever had any hardship themselves, and they've just had everything given to them, so they can say, oh, you know, oh, we're so privileged and we're feeling guilty about our privilege, and that's great that they're feeling guilty about it because they've never had any hardship. Yeah, and the other lot of people I found are a lot of young people that maybe still like live at home or, you know, at uni or whatever, that are saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter about property or people, you know, or anything else because, you know, what's the problem? Well, it's easy to say that when you aren't, you know, you haven't had to work for things all your life. You know, so I think people need to sort of calm down a little bit and actually think about everyone else's like feelings, and I don't mean that in a weak way, but you know, people that, like Steve's just said, the people that they're attacking, these are fellow black citizens. These businesses, they're their businesses, they're their houses. How is that helping them?
And now, just to address Jonathan's point about rioting being fun, I personally don't think I'd find rioting fun at all. But then my idea of fun is kind of an evening of Monopoly or Cluedo with a pizza. So it's not surprising that I don't find that sort. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, I think probably it's more about the stealing, because you can see people coming out absolutely gleeful with armfuls of kind of new electronics and shoes and things, and the black and white and Hispanic and all sorts of different people doing it. It's not one race doing it. But I did notice that the response to this, first of all, the left wing in America are calling for the police to be defunded. And then some cities are actually talking about closing down their police force and replacing it with some different method of control. Now, this is police forces who are policing difficult neighbourhoods where there's a lot of crime. And they're talking about taking them away. I've got a feeling that the mood will change if they do something as foolish as that. I mean, what do you reckon? Does it sound like a good idea to remove the police? What do you think, Susan?
I think it'd be really interesting to see what happens. I personally wouldn't be voting for any removal of the police. Just know. Again, could you imagine if people haven't got anything to lose? Could you imagine if there's no consequences?
You kind of missed the point here. There's been a very active experiment with this for at least the last 10 years, and that's where we live.
You leave our police force out of this.
Yeah, we've got a good police force. Nothing wrong with our
They are.
force.
They've done amazing work recently that we can't tell anyone about, but they've done really well.
Moving on to agenda item 2. Fears of a second coronavirus spike are growing today after new figures showed the virus could be growing exponentially in the northwest of England. Jonathan, I want you to be very careful with your comments during this. You can sometimes say things that are humorous, but people don't find funny, so be careful. The reproduction rate is thought to be 1.01 in the northwest and 1 in the southwest, according to data compiled by Public Health England and Cambridge University. The blow comes as the World Health Organization updated its guidelines to recommend everyone wears a mask while in public, and over 60s wear medical grade masks. So, do you think we're heading for a terrible, devastating second wave, Jonathan?
No.
Thank you. Sam, what do you think?
Oh, I don't think anyone knows for sure, but that'll certainly be interesting, won't it? Because if they have a massive second wave in London, it does show that people being in close proximity, like the riots, does cause a problem. And if we don't, then it shows that it's all been nonsense all along. So
well, I said this on social media the other day. You should be able to now look at the places in America where there were riots, and in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, we should see spikes in all those areas. If we don't, something's awry, isn't it? I mean, what do you think, Susan?
I think we're probably going to see a second spike because of all the people that have been rioting and breaking all the rules and stuff like that. So I think realistically, I think the government needs to be very clear on what they class as a spike or not. So remember when it was originally the hospital was being overwhelmed? We expect people to get a virus. I mean, it's an airborne and touch virus. There's no way in the world that we're all not going to get it. No matter how much you shield, it's still going to be on all your products from the grocery store and everything else. So are we going to allow people to be affected, or are we just waiting for the hospitals to get overrun? I mean, do we actually care if so many people are infected if they're not dying?
So
isn't that a good thing?
We seem to get studies late, and sometimes not at all, to suit whatever narrative our country is running at the time, or our media. Because I read a study just last week which said that most of the evidence now shows that the virus is not being transmitted between people outside. Most virus cases are caught by close family in the house or in care homes and hospital situations, and that is what is apparently the numbers are showing. Now, I don't know if that's right, but we didn't even hear about the study. That's the point. And we've got this kind of fear being brought up more and more about going outside. I suspect the government's just said that we've got to wear masks on public transport. I suspect they're going to say probably masks got to be worn everywhere outside.
But they're not making them wear them in schools at the moment, are they?
Not
Which
at the
I thought they would do.
I don't think they're going to be able to make people wear masks. No one's wearing masks at the moment. I mean, I went out today and it was just like a normal day. The roads were busy, supermarkets were normal. I think there was like one person in a mask. I think the people now are just, I think, not as scared as they were, because I think, like I say, this riots has just changed people's mind frames.
Yeah.
When you can see hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of people, all stood together, it just makes you think what a joke it is.
All stood together and nobody doing anything. They're happy to come and arrest people for sitting on a park bench or for, but they don't do anything about these protests.
And the same lefties that were furious at Dominic Cummings for going like in his own private car to his
Exactly the same people, yeah.
And now, but it's suddenly okay to go and like play the maracas next to 35 other people that you've never met.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does sort of seem like a lot of the country has decided the lockdown's over and the government hasn't realised yet. But obviously there are still bastions of holdouts, so schools are still very nervous, and all the government services like councils and the police and the fire service all very nervous apparently. But out there you're definitely seeing a change of mood. I see it every day. It eases up every day. People standing a bit close together, fewer people with masks, more fun, more laughter, less terror in everyone's eyes, I remember at one point, if you walked too close to someone, you could get a mouthful for it. Haven't seen that in a couple of weeks.
I do find, though, that people are okay to do that. They're okay to meet their family and go around families and meet everyone in the park and stuff like that. But the minute you mention you've got to go back to work, I have seen a spike in attitude that says, how dare you put our lives at risk by making us go back to work? So I do think that's quite an interesting take on things, because my husband's desperate to go back to work and his site's not letting him, and we're not getting any of that money. I mean, we got some of the government self-employed thing, but I can tell you now, it barely covered a month of his wages that he brings in. So that obviously the 3 months that he's been off, that didn't even touch the sides as it went in the bank. But yeah, I find that everyone's A-okay until you say you've got to go back to work, and then everyone's really conscious about their health.
And what is it, a quarter or a third of the population currently being paid by the government now? And they must be patently aware that if they drag the lockdown on too long, they're going to have to do another round of the payments to small businesses and to self-employed and to discretionary grants.
They are.
They have to do another round of it, because the money they gave, it was great at the start, but it doesn't last forever, does it? So if the longer they drag it, the longer they're going to be pressured, and they've already spent billions.
So they are doing another round of the self-employed thing. They're dropping it, I think, to 60% now.
Furlough, yeah.
Yeah, so they're doing that. So they're carrying on furlough. I'm aware that a lot of businesses are trying to go back to work now, because you just can't keep going. You can't keep paying ground rent and all your outgoings and stuff and not having any income in. The self-employed will have another round of their money going as well. So yeah, I mean, that is. And I think mortgages because the mortgages were told that they've got to do another 3 months. But I think that a lot of them are dragging their heels. I know mine is. I've been looking at mine just to see what they do. And every week it says, we'll let you know this week. And then every week that goes past, it says, I'll let you know next week.
And I noticed that holiday companies have started taking bookings from August.
Yeah.
So, things are definitely easing up all over the place, all over the world. We are a bit behind, I think, but I think we're catching up fast. Anyway, moving on to the next agenda item. So, at the beginning of The Plague, in the 1947 dystopian novel by Albert Camus, I don't know how you say that. Camus. Albert Camus, thank you, Jonathan. The first sign of that an epidemic had gripped the fictional town of Iran is that rats which appear without warning in their midst. During the corona... What?
Who suggested this topic?
Oh, I did.
Oh.
Thank you. During the coronavirus lockdown, a similar phenomenon is being witnessed across Britain, with one crucial exception. For while the rats of Iran emerged from the sewers to die on the streets in their thousands, during the COVID pandemic they appear to be thriving. According to the British Pest Control Association, more than half of pest control professionals have reported a massive increase in rat activity since lockdown began at the end of March. With restaurants closed, many rat populations have been forced to abandon their city centre boroughs and expand into the homes and gardens in pursuit of food. So here's a possible consequence we weren't sure of lockdown. Rats everywhere. What do you make of it, Jonathan?
You've always got rats.
You're full
Rats
of
are everywhere.
You're full of chat tonight, aren't you?
I was going to say, he's so good to have on a discussion programme.
Well, it's probably better to know what the subject's going to be. But
Haven't you read the book, then?
rats.
Jonathan, you sound like a growly bear. You're
What?
like, rah, 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 for about 10 minutes before you start speaking.
Well, I am. Yeah.
I thought you suggested this, Jonathan, because I thought you'd read the book.
No. Nobody suggested
No,
anything.
the number of books I've ever read go on about one hand. What are you doing, Sam?
I did
After
wonder.
Giving everyone a fill.
Putting my laptop on charge. No, I read it. I thought it was an existentialist classic, to be honest.
Did
I
you?
thought it had a very...
You got
No,
that
I
from,
did, yeah.
Did
I thought
Wikipedia
that-
think so too?
No, I think it had a similar narrative tone to Kafka, actually.
Oh,
It's
right.
good.
Kafkaesque then.
Yeah, it was Kafkaesque, really. I mean, it was
Susan?
a start...
Yeah, you're reading off Wikipedia.
Susan, what did you make of the fictional dystopian novel by Albert Camus?
Yeah, I've not read that. I'll get around to it. It's on my list of reads.
Right, I think
Definitely
we
on my
should do
list
a
of
book
reads.
club. We'll all read it for the next podcast and then we'll have a chat about it. Anyway, the fact is, rats everywhere.
Do that.
Rats everywhere. Lockdown did it. What do you think, Susan?
Well, to be fair, everyone's been really happy with the increase in wildlife, haven't they? Do you mean in other countries where where they've got beautiful wildlife, they've been going all over the place. I think it's a nice addition. Can't wait to have rats roaming around. Great.
Lovely little fellas. What do you think, Sam?
I shot one. I did shoot a rat once.
I would actually like to see if everyone is genuinely up for this, in all seriousness, because it's on Amazon for $5.99. You could buy a copy each and read it for the next podcast. I'm genuinely up for doing that, if everyone else is.
You are already causing us to lose about 3/4 of our viewership for the next one. No one's going to tune in for this. Actually, they might, just because we sound so stupid.
Exactly. It's a story of it's an allegory of France's suffering under the Nazi occupation and a story of bravery and determination against the precariousness of human existence. It does actually sound quite interesting. I'm actually buying it.
Okay.
Then you'd give us a synopsis of what it's like afterwards.
Now,
So, Sam, you asked about who chose it. Well, the fact is nobody suggested anything, really. So I had to come up with some stuff, and so I just went with the interesting news like you do on Google, and I picked out some ones that looked interesting. Anyway, let me get on to agenda item 4, which follows on a little bit. So if you didn't think this year was...
Mentioning the rat thing, the other week I came in the house and nearly stood on a rat, and
That's a very
it sort of shot off
unpleasant
and I haven't
thing
seen it
That's a
again.
very unpleasant thing to say about your other half.
What's that?
Nothing, Jonathan. So, can I continue now, or have you got anything else you wanted to add there, Jonathan?
Well, no, it was a rat and it's gone. It's not really a big drama.
actually was a rat in Jonathan's kitchen.
What's he going to do?
Yeah. There wasn't a rat in my kitchen. There was a mouse at one stage.
Whoosh! Straight over your head, that, Jonathan.
Okay, so here's the next one. So if you didn't think this year was biblical enough, swarms of locusts have invaded vast swathes of land in India since April this year. This locust attack has affected about 90,000 hectares across 20 districts in Rajasthan. This quickly growing swarm is now threatening to amplify into an agrarian disaster. A huge challenge is likely to emerge when they start breeding. The locusts, which entered India, were about 10 to 12 days old and were flying huge distances in search of food. But they will now start laying eggs after the onset of the monsoon and continue breeding for 2 more months. The destructive power of a typical locust swarm can be enormous. The sizes of these swarms can vary from less than 1 square kilometre to several hundred square kilometres. 1 square kilometre of swarm can contain 40 million locusts, and they can eat as much food as 35,000 people. So, just if you didn't think there was enough kind of biblical stuff going on, swarms of locusts. What do you think of this, Sam?
I think the rapture is definitely happening. It's on its way.
Well, like Blondie or like the biblical one?
The rapture, come on, everyone knows about it. Second coming of Jesus, and he's going to rise up. All four horsemen of the apocalypse are coming. He's going to raise the dead back to the living, etc., etc., etc.
We haven't got enough houses for the living. We can't have any more rising. I'm sorry. We're full.
To live on earth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That could be.
Well, I have to say, it's not all Christians like necessarily follow the rapture. It tends to be more of an evangelist thing. Like a lot of the COV people, a bit like low church, don't believe it so much.
What do you
think? I feel like they deny. I think they're rapture deniers. I just don't think they're as signed up to it. But I'm not a rapture expert, so.
Susan, I'm not going to ask you what you know about rapture. What I want to know, and I'm not going to ask you to rap about it either. But what I am going to do is ask you whether you think that we've seen everything 2020 has to throw at us, because we've had plagues, we've had locusts, we've had killer hornets, we've had riots, we've had fire. What's coming next, Susan?
I don't know. Surely nothing else, though. Surely nothing else. I just don't think we can take anything more.
Asteroid?
I guess
aliens?
Well, you never know. I guess on a local kind of lower level, I think we'll have a really bad season of flu. So, in the winter, that's going to look forward to.
I think when they measure the flu this year, it will be surprisingly low, and everyone will wonder why. What do you think, Jonathan? Rapture?
No. I mean, there's you've got all sorts of things always, haven't you? I mean, who now remembers the Australian bushfires? And that was only a few months ago.
The Australians.
So, pardon?
The Australians remember it.
And the day when
well, that's possibly true, but the world moves on, doesn't it? I mean, we could certainly fit in a bit of flooding this year, possibly, or a war.
The days when the only
stuff
things...
to keep us interested and keep the newspapers in business.
Yeah, but the days when the only things people were talking about was Brexit, it just seems a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Do you remember that? Do you remember when every bit of news was Brexit? And I'm like,
what? Steve, what's Brexit?
It's that thing we won.
Going back to the rapture, does anyone else think that is the worst Blondie song ever written? It's just rubbish, wasn't it?
There's quite a lot of Blondie songs I'm not massively keen on.
I don't know how it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Go on, Sam, sing it.
I also don't know how the Bible goes either, so...
I thought, well, I was going to make a joke and be like, oh, your hair is beautiful and stuff, like quoting from... It's actually atomic, and I realised that. And then I was like, oh, how does rapture go? And I Googled the lyrics, and I realised I actually don't know it. I have no idea how it goes. I'm none the wiser.
All right, so we'll all listen to Rapture, the song by Blondie, for the next podcast, and we'll review it.
Okay.
That book, which I ordered.
We like to be topical here on the Unapologetic. So anyway, we've got to the end of the show. I just want to see if there's anything anyone else wants to add to our conversation. So I'll do the usual thing, and I'll go around and see if anybody's got anything burning they want to talk about before we go. And I'm going to start with Susan. Susan, got anything you want to add?
Why are you laughing?
Because I always start with you and you hate it.
You are?
I always start with you and you never have anything.
I don't. I'm good. All right. So I think it's really good after all the COVID stuff that local stuff's opened back up. So I think that's been quite nice to see the local markets and bits and bobs like that been opening back up. I think that gives me a bit of hope for the future. That's quite nice. That's all I got.
Jonathan, got anything to add?
The market's been open all the way through.
No, non-essential.
Yeah, the market's been open
now.
all the way through.
Only essential.
Non-essential.
Not non-essential stalls.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Got to plug it in.
We got the whole market back. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Super.
In fact,
I'll go and rush out and buy some concrete gnomes.
In fact, more than one, I think, although they didn't seem to be
I
that
know.
many, they didn't seem to be that many people.
You need a few, really, to make an impact, don't you? Because, one garden gnome, you're just not going to cut it.
Sam, what do you think? Anything to add?
Go to Jonathan first, because I'm waiting to think of the thing I want to say.
All right. Well, I do. Before we go to Jonathan, I've got a request from a viewer, and a viewer messaged me to say, could we talk about copyright on photos? So the viewer broadly wanted to know whether the people of Unapologetic agreed that when somebody takes a photo of something and publishes it online, it's pretty rotten to steal that photo and not accredit them for it. I mean, I think that's basically copyright theft, isn't it, Jonathan?
I'm not up on copyright law.
Do you think it's a wrong
I
thing
think
to do, though?
if you put a picture on social media, you can more or less say ta-ta to copyright. I mean,
What do you think, Susan? You think it's a bit rotten?
I think you should say who you got it from. Wasn't there that big story when the Glenfield Towers, the Glenfield fires were going on, and one of the fire brigade took a picture, and the Sun newspaper said, "Can I use it?" And he said, "No,
Yeah.
you can't."
No,
Well,
I
I
think-
thought to be, and he put that on social media, and the Sun had to ask for that, didn't they?
I'm not a lawyer, but as I understand it, you can't use someone else's photo, even if it's published on social media. You can share their post, but you can't take their photo and use it in your own work without them giving you permission. I think. I'm
It's
not an
lazy
expert.
journalism, though. That's why they do it, isn't it? Rather than them, it's too much effort for them to send like one message.
Yeah,
They'd much
lazy.
rather just
Yeah.
cheat and just take the photo.
Yeah, just they can't be bothered to do their job properly, yeah. Anyway, so, Jonathan, do you have something you want to add tonight?
no.
Okay, Sam? You've run out of time, I'm afraid. Is that...
Yeah. Okay, never mind. I won't say it then.
Oh. Okay,
Don't
well,
say it.
There are only two genders. There is no patriarchal oppression. Socialism doesn't work.
you read that off a T-shirt.
I read it off of a meme. It's a meme from Right Wing Bible, and it's a guy saying, "Tell to an alien, tell me everything you know." And the alien says, "There are only two genders. There is no patriarchal oppression. Socialism doesn't work." And then the human's mind is blown. Like, whoa, mind blown. It's quite a good meme, actually.
That's obviously a
On
left-wing
Facebook.
human.
I thought it was funny. I love that right-wing political Bible. They've got so many good memes on there. It's just awesome. Check it out.
But are they copyright?
Well, we don't.
Well,
We didn't show
do
it.
it.
We didn't show it. We just read it. Anyway, that's a perfectly suitable thing to put on Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news, and stuff from a right of centre viewpoint. Say good night, Susan.
Hello.
Say good night, Jonathan.
Good night.
Say good night, Sam.
Good night.
And I'm Steve. And if I've done this right, we should actually get the music up again. He says, hopefully.
He hasn't pressed the go, has he?
I have. There you go.
We've lost faith in him, Jonathan, haven't we?
Come on, do the dance.
I'm just going to do the song as well, the words.
It hasn't got any words. Stop lying.